Good morning and welcome to Thursdays with Culture Talk. This is Teresa Agresta here with Culture Talk, joining you again this week with another really exciting topic, something that is really near and dear to our hearts at Culture Talk. And if you are new to the conversation, let me start by telling you a little bit about Culture Talk, who we are, and what we're doing. And then I'm going to introduce our guest this morning. You'll see that Kirsty Innes actually coming to us from Scotland in her afternoon. We'll be diving into the topic about purpose-led organizations. So Culture Talk is an organization that makes culture tangible. And one of the reasons that I'm so excited about welcoming Kirsty to the program today is because our purpose is deeply tied to helping organizations make sense of their purpose. And then to having that really filter out through all different aspects of their operations and their employee experience and the talent life cycle. Because we know that culture and purpose should be touching everything in an organization. And so I'm excited to dive into the topic of purpose-led organizations with Kirsty, who is a certified partner with Culture Talk, has been working with us over the past few years to really take this further and drive this conversation in really important and exciting ways. And I'm going to give her a chance to introduce herself and her work a little bit. Her background is similar to ours in that she comes from a brand and marketing perspective and has really been on a journey and has been able to transition her work and bring it to a much deeper level. And that's what we're going to talk about today. She also is going to get a chance to share with us her new white paper. She has released a really impactful piece of work in her white paper called Why Purpose, Why Now? The Role of Marketing in a World of Overconsumption. So Kirsty, welcome. And please give us a little bit of background. Tell us about your career and the journey and the transitions that you've been undergoing.
Yeah, as you alluded to in that introduction, it has been quite a journey. I think if you were to look at my LinkedIn profile, it's very logical, it's very neat. Starting out as a marketing exec and having a very sort of logical career. And my career has mostly ended up in the sphere in the public sector, primarily in economic development and regeneration. And the premise behind economic development work is that you leave a place better than it was when you found it. And we had this mantra, which is that regeneration, economic development, it's more than bricks and mortar. It's about people and it's about legacy. And I had a good career and really enjoyed the work that I was doing. And then I set up my business as a independent marketing consultant, only to find that that experience didn't really work, and it's almost like I didn't fit in, because I was seen as not being commercial enough. And so when you're starting out in business and you're trying to find new clients, I realized I had to almost become more commercial. And to become more commercial,
market yourself, correct?
Well, exactly. And yeah. But also from a perspective of marketing, it was about demonstrating the ROI of that marketing, and it was all about the money and how quickly will we see returns and see the results of this marketing. And I guess the more commercial I became to sort of adapt to this, the more unhappy I became, because it became all about just helping companies and businesses to just sell more stuff. And looking back now, I can recognize I actually became quite ill with that, because it just didn't align with me and what I wanted to be doing. And it was there was a bit of a light bulb moment in 2019, because in this space of being quite lost actually and feeling very misaligned, I attended a conference in Edinburgh. And it was in that conference that I learned about for the first time the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. I'd never come across them before. And the whole premise of that conference was about business as being a force for good. And it was around about that time also that I came across CultureTalk, which I found really useful to better understand my clients and the individuals and the leaders within that organisation, to understand what their motivations and their drivers were for the business. So really, since that conference in 2019, I think it's fair to say that things have only got worse. You know, we have the pandemic, we have the cost of living crisis, climate emergency, the war in Ukraine. And
I've got to say, Kirsty, I'm kind of glad you figured it all out before the pandemic, right?
yeah. So it's only really got worse, I suppose. And then where we are now, is well, who do we trust to lead us out of this mess?
Yeah, that's a huge question.
And it's created this massive void of trust, and it was from this basis really that I've created the framework that I use now, based on the work of JP LaCour, who's also a CultureTalk partner.
Also a CultureTalk partner, right? So help us to understand that journey from more traditional, right? We have more traditional marketing, and I know when we first began talking, it was brand and bringing these ideas forward into brand, and yet you were still searching. So where is it today? What is your offer, and how do you tie those things together? Because I know when you think about, you know, the way you talk today about purpose, way, impact, that there is a continuity of the ideas and kind of like a thread that brings them all together, a through line. Tell us about what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly that. So the purpose, way, impact framework, it's about really helping my clients to really hone in on what that purpose of the organization is, and to really ensuring that once they've defined that and articulated that, and which is about more than the money or the profit, it's then how do you anchor that purpose into the way it does business. So what does that mean for its culture? What does that mean for its operations and its products and its services and delivery and relationships? Right through then to making good on that promise, that purpose promise, in order to maximize impact. So it absolutely is like, you know, a thread or a string of beads, for example.
I like that description of the string of beads, because
without one, the beads will all drop, you know. So it's without that thread. So it's from going from purpose right through the way and the culture, purpose at one end, right through to the brand, and then the marketing, right the way through, right through the core of the organization.
Yeah, I think a lot of organizations think about marketing tactics, and in the tactics is where they're looking to have that first question you talked about, which is, you know, show me the ROI, prove that the tactics are working. And what I love about the premise that you talk about is you have to go backwards along that string almost. You know, tactics come out of brand needs to be rooted in culture is a way of living our purpose. And so at the heart of it all is this idea of purpose. And I don't think you're alone these days in talking about purpose, but I do think that the way that you're talking about it is, you know, really central to the way an organization thinks, acts, and believes. And I'd love if you could just define it for us, because I think that there's a lot of misunderstanding out there about what it means to be purposeful or purpose-led. But from your perspective, what does that mean? You know, what is an organization's purpose?
Yeah, it's true to say that at the moment there's a lot of businesses, or a lot of talk of purpose and being purpose-driven and purpose-led, and yeah, why is that, and why now in particular as well? So I think as consumers, you know, we are looking for trustworthy businesses. You know, we are looking to do the right thing, and we will seek out the brands or the businesses that we trust.
Right.
And I suppose it's from that demand almost that businesses are trying to present themselves as therefore being purposeful. But from my definition of it is that it's the purpose without having that social or environmental impact. It's not really purpose. It's meaningless. It's just a statement really that you're purposeful or purpose driven or purpose led. And really that's going back to that idea of trust. You can't sort of claim to be purpose driven or just because you say you are. And what does it really mean to be grounded in that, to be wanting to deliver that social environmental impact? And it really is like concentric circles where you have purpose right at the core of the business. It's the very essence of the organization, and then around that your culture just envelops that purpose, and then you can build a brand around it, which then is just as a reflection of what's going on in the inside, and that's long before you can start to talk about it and market it.
Yeah. So it's almost like you can't have one without the other and still be authentic, right? So we know all over the place are organizations that are starting with tactics and giving lip service to some of the other things. I mean, it sort of lends itself to the question of what is it not? So some examples of what companies are sort of putting out there as purpose statements, or, wanting people to buy into the idea that they're driven by a core purpose. But what would be the opposite then? And then maybe we can dive into some examples of, what it means to really be purpose led, and how do you get there, right? How do you either work with your existing organization to develop a strong purpose or uncover an authentic purpose? But what's it not? So start with what is it that's more surfacey, and should we have our radar on about be looking for?
Well, to me, being purposeful, as we were saying just previously there, it's about what is that organization doing to solve the challenges faced by humanity, and it all goes back to that idea of trust again. So we have who do we trust, and there's this trust void, and so you have the companies that are the businesses wanting to be seen to be trustworthy, so they'll make claims about being green or ethical or eco or sustainable, and I suppose from that there's this new expression of greenwashing.
Right, that's just going to bring that up,
or purpose washing.
Purpose washing, right?
Which is if there's a term for it, I suppose it's about having these meaningless statements that aren't really which aren't a filter through which all that communication goes through. They're just sort of stuck on.
Tacked on. Sounds good. We ought to.
And there's that superficiality to it. It's very populist, so
and it almost feels like coming out of the PR department, probably.
Exactly. And
we think that the stakeholders or the shareholders will be happier, will check that box if we are making this corporate statement and posting it to our website, perhaps.
And I suppose it's quite sad, but it is, I guess, an indictment of the times in which we live. I mean, you don't have to look very far. I mean, the UK government trust is at an all-time low, and they will make claims of being wanting to help and caring when actually oftentimes it's diversion and from the real issues.
You've devoted a whole section of your white paper to the concept of trust. It's something that I think, if I were to say it sort of like sandwiches between the challenges and the problems that we're facing today and the way through to solutions and to developing or prioritizing, rewarding companies that are really coming from a place of social and environmental impact and purpose. And so you've really sort of shown, like, who can we trust and how can we start to rebuild that trust. So it feels like a really weighty topic on our way to more purposeful organizations.
And I think that's the key point as well. It's not if it's not the stuck on or superficial marketing, right? Then it's about really reframing what the role of business is. So it's about balancing people and planet, and it's not about growth for growth's sake and profit at any cost.
Right. Well, and there's study after study that have proven that when you actually do come from this authentic place of purpose, you are more profitable. You do have, aligned growth, or growth that is sustainable. And there are other ways of measuring success in the business. And on all of those scales, you can start to measure that your organization and your business is quite successful. But that reframing takes time. And I always perceive you, Kirsty, as kind of a pioneer out there in helping to define the conversation around, reframing what an organization should be focused on and thinking about. So one question that comes up for me is, some real world examples. I'd love to hear about an organization that you're working with that is beginning to apply this methodology. And I know that, if someone were to get a hold of your white paper, they would see this infinity symbol that's representative of the Purpose Way Impact methodology and the way that you work with organizations. What does that look like? What kind of a journey do you bring clients on, and how do you open these really important conversations with them?
Yeah, well, I'm working with a credit union at the moment, actually, and they are one of the largest credit unions in Scotland. And you could say that they inherently have that social purpose right at their core. A credit union is all about fair and ethical finance. And interestingly, they said, how did that come about? Well, they actually came to me because they thought that they needed it was about branding and marketing. They thought that they have this inherent social purpose, but that actually we need to market ourselves better, and we need to be telling the world about what we do more effectively. And by working with this company, with this credit union, we really realized that it wasn't really a branding and marketing project, but actually it was about culture, and it was about and they needed to they already had that social purpose, but it was actually about connecting with it, or reconnecting with it,
or owning it, right?
And owning it, and particularly at this time, when we started out by saying, the work of a credit union has never been more important, when there are lots of people falling through the cracks, and so their work was really important. So we used the CultureTalk initially, the survey, to understand the organization as a whole, and as you say, making that culture tangible. How do we measure it? And looked at the drivers of the senior management team, and we soon realized that it wasn't about the marketing or the branding at all, but rather about recalibrating or resetting or even reminding to what that social purpose was within the organization, and bringing everyone around that purpose again. Having the 2 years that we've had, everyone's been working from home, and that had been lost a little bit, and people had sort of gone into so there was they hadn't come together around that purpose. It become very diluted over time. And that's
what's really interesting when you think about it. So we know that a credit union as a type of organization has a social purpose, and yet each credit union, if we were to measure their culture, would have a different archetype pattern, would have a different culture pattern, the way that comes to life, the way that they express it, and getting into the weeds around what are the stories here at this credit union. what is the way in which we will live this contract that we have? I mean, I think you could probably call it a contract that a credit union makes with its public and with society, but the way that we will operate. And, so I'm really curious, what did you uncover? Like, so at this credit union, what was the culture profile? And then pull us back down a bead, right? And go back to the purpose, because I know that's the core, that the level you're working at with them.
Well, interestingly, their dominant archetype was innocent. And so innocent is all about, that transparency and hope and that trust.
Yes.
Trust. And that was their dominant archetype. And and along with caregiver. So naturally, that very empathetic and caring organization, and the people that worked for it wanted to do the best for their members. But what was missing, I guess, and sort of through the analysis, was this every person, which had become, I think, had been there, but had become very diluted with everybody having working from home and not working together. So the culture work we're doing around trying to sort of almost reignite or galvanize again around that every person, where the team can sort of link arms and all put their shoulder to the wheel, and in helping their members and being the voice for their members, and fighting that inequality and championing fairness and really understanding at a deep level the challenges that their members are facing, and that every person had I suppose unraveled a little bit over the past 2 years. So the work we're doing is very much about trying to galvanize around that and
revitalize
build it up again.
So what does that look like in a tangible way? So how does that come through, either what employees are experiencing at the employment level and the ways that it's coming into programs or products or services that are on offer for the credit union to their customers?
Yeah, so
members, I should say. Members.
Yes, so it's about from an every person point of view, it's about being really coming together to kind of work out how they can deliver the best service where it's needed the most. And I think that's one of the key learnings. So how each one of them, no matter what their role is, whether that's on the phones dealing with member inquiries, or in the finance department processing loans, or admin, or even senior management level where they're lobbying and being a voice for their members around in the sort of finance sector, that everybody in that organization's role is vital, and to collectively they're doing really, really important work, and that they are all part of making this work.
So that one for all for one, every person culture is a little bit less hierarchical, more let's dig in together to get the job done. I loved your example of putting your shoulder to the wheel. I love that thinking and visuals around what is the culture, and it also has a lot to do with undoing sort of injustice, or standing up for the underdog, and fighting the good fight, sort of down and dirty a little bit, right? Getting gritty out there and
absolutely, yeah,
coming up with solutions.
And that against the innocent, which is quite an interesting dynamic,
right?
Yeah. So they're dominant being innocent, and sort of tapping into that every person, and recognizing that they'll be far more effective working together and have far more of an impact, and make more of a difference, and everybody within that team is vitally important to delivering that service for their members.
So when you think about that, and then how is that going to translate into the experience that members have? Let's talk about some outcomes, the way of shifting. And I know this is ongoing, this culture shift and focus, but how does that translate into creative approaches to products, perhaps?
Yeah, so by really tapping into that purpose, so by understanding the organization and the culture within the organization, and then linking that very clearly to the purpose of the organization.
Yes.
And for that purpose to be really lived and breathed throughout the organization, what does that mean for the way it delivers its services? So there have it, and again, it's how do we deliver the best service where it's needed the most? And it has made them look at, they're beginning to think, what does this mean for our services? So a credit union,
we can't just keep on doing the same thing, right? If we're really thinking about these things, we actually have to change things.
Yeah. So if you just take an example, a credit union's offering is usually pretty simple. It's loans and it's savings, and some credit unions will offer insurance or mortgages and so on. But if it's about loans and product, loans and savings rather, would, for example, if you are offering car loans, and you are truly about fair finance and we haven't really touched on this, but the impact of our buying decisions, on the planet, then
right, back to the UN sustainability goals.
Yes, in terms of the linking the planet and people and profit. Would you, for example, offer another product which is at maybe preferential interest rates to for a car servicing package, for example? So you're not necessarily encouraging your members to take out a loan to cover the cost of a car, but they might take a smaller loan at a better interest rate in order to get a servicing package. So
to keep the car running,
keep the car on the road for longer.
Right.
And typically, you might run marketing campaigns in the run up to Christmas, say, cover the cost of Christmas. Well, what would having this truly purposeful approach right at the heart of the organization, what does that mean for its marketing and communications? Well, does it mean you would still get a Christmas loan here to cover the cost of Christmas?
Right. Overspend on Christmas.
And on Christmas. Or would actually how would that then translate into the way and the messages that they're putting out? So that really is how that purpose runs through the culture, through its service and its product offerings, right through to its branding and the messaging that it's putting out, and it's got to be consistent right the way through from beginning to end, like that string of beads.
Right? Exactly. And to differentiate how a more traditional approach, when somebody would have called Kirsty Innes the marketing specialist or the brand and marketing person in the past, might have been focused on how do we sell more loans? How do we close more loans? And maybe we create an offering that helps us to be successful in driving more business without ever understanding, is that aligned with our purpose? And is that having a positive impact on our members? Ultimately, what's the long-term trickle effect of the products and the services that we offer?
Yeah, absolutely.
So how does it feel today when you think about your offer and the emphasis and at the core of it being driven by organizational purpose? What other types of conversations are you leading?
It feels good. It feels good because it has been a long journey, and of almost totally falling out of love with marketing and all that it has become and what it's seen as. And now, marketing and business is being used as a force for good. It's and that feels very good.
Nice. I want to give you a chance to talk a little bit about your white paper. I know that it's quite a work. I've read it, and there's just an enormous amount of really strong ideas pulled together in a compelling way for people who, especially for people who are coming from a marketing perspective, but really for everybody, for leaders and people who are ready to be rethinking how they're showing up in business and as organizational leaders. There's a couple of things, as I said earlier, the name of the white paper is Why Purpose, Why Now? and the role of marketing in a world of overconsumption. And Kirsty draws out the implications for, why we need to reframe the role of business and what role can marketing play in creating the positive outcomes as opposed to just following along and, I'm picking up that last bead on the thread. There's a couple of quotes. I'm just going to, pull out some of the ones that really spoke to me, Kirsty, and then I would love to have you share with people a little bit more about it and how they can get it and where to find you. So one that really stood out to me was perhaps we could start by referring to people as citizens rather than consumers. And it just really made me pause. And, I think that by really, thinking about people as citizens and the role that they're playing, that, a citizen is part of a greater whole. A citizen has, a set of ideals and hopes and dreams. A consumer feels like a label. It feels farther away from, I don't have to think about that as a real human being. It's a consumer, it's a number. So that was one that really stood out to me.
It's interesting you said that, because somebody else said that to me last week as well, and actually that's just like one sentence, and there's this whole thing, and there's nothing really, there's not any padding around that, is it? It's just, it's just why do we call consumers?
Well, and there is a definition, right? And we could dive into that, but
yeah, it's just we're just gobbling up whatever's put in front of us.
Yeah. Yep. And I'll grab another one, and then I would love to hear what your thoughts are. So many businesses are going to have to fundamentally change what they are doing, whether that is by creating new products, changing the way existing products are made and distributed, or changing business models and practices. So that sort of runs the gamut of innovation and the way we need to think. And really purpose, when you come from your purpose, and that statement was coming out of, well, what happens now we've uncovered our purpose, how can we can't continue on as usual. We need to change, and we need to understand, well, what does that change look like or mean for our organization? Really taking a hard look at what you're doing and why.
Yeah, and I think it means it's turning everything on its head as we know it.
Yes, and that's scary. So that can be very scary.
Yeah, I mean, incrementalism isn't going to get us out of this mess. So little tweaks here and there is not going to solve the problems that we're facing with the climate emergency and everything that's going on, and to stay within 1.5 degrees, climate, global warming, these little tweaking around the edges is not going to cut it really. And it's really turning the whole what is the economy, and if it's not in service of people and planet, it's something happening over there that we are the economy. Our buying decisions is the economy, and so what is the role of business within that economy, and what is the role of marketing within that economy? We know we consume too much. We're already exceeding planetary boundaries, and so just sort of a bit of recycling and changing to LED lights, it's not really going to get us to where we need to get.
There's a few ticks, right? That's just checking some boxes. I think a lot of times businesses don't know where to begin, and that's what I love about the message that you've been putting out there, both through your white paper and your regular posts on LinkedIn, is that you're giving people much deeper ways of looking at it, thinking about it, and taking action. And, I really applaud what you're doing. We have a question coming in from the LinkedIn group there, and that is back to the credit union, an example, Kirsty. So at the credit union, how important was identifying and consistently living the values to strengthen the culture and deliver on the purpose? So identifying and living the values is really the question.
So how important was that? Well, it was very important. to the chief executive, obviously, and we're very much, that's what the whole objective of the work that we're doing is about. I mean, at an individual level, all of these individuals are really committed to the role, but what we need to do is almost collectively galvanize and be re-energized by that central social purpose, and it's already there. But I think just because of the last 2 years and it's been working remotely, and it's about pulling that back together again and just reconnecting with that. So it's vitally important, because they can have far more of an impact if they're all pointing, standing facing the same direction, and they're all pulling together, and are really energized by the work that they're doing. So it's vitally important, and that's the work that we're doing to work with the staff and the senior team.
Yeah, and I think it's been unsaid, but it probably bears saying that in looking at purpose, we are way less focused on the traditional definition of mission, vision, values. Obviously, clearly values, and there's still a vision and there's still a mission inherent in that. But in some ways, those more traditional statements, if you will, had become so watered down as to be meaningless and as to be useless. And so I think this shift in focus to purpose, way, impact is really a move towards something that is rooted in purpose. And it gives that, when you say they're all sort of facing the same direction, they know what they're looking at, they know what they're working toward, and it's much clearer.
And being able to capture that in a way that really resonates and is relevant to them is vitally important.
Yes. So if somebody wanted to download your white paper, connect with you, learn more about what you do and the model that you've created, Kirsty, where would they go to do those things?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn a lot, so it's just Kirsty Innes Marketing, and to download the white paper, it's whypurposewhynow.kirstyness.com, and there's a landing page and it's free to download, and my website is kirstyness.com.
Awesome. Why purpose, why now, whitepaper.com.
Whypurposewhynow.kirstyness.com. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Awesome. I encourage you to do that. I also thank you, Kirsty, for joining us this morning, sharing your ideas and your journey, and look forward to many more projects and hearing where you take this.
Well, thank you very much
for being there.
Inviting me today. Thank you.
Right. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.